Alrighty. How are we feeling about the SEC this year?
Man, oh man, the good old SEC. The It just means more conference, huh? Uh, SEC, the deepest conference of them all, of the Power Four, I have to say. Top to bottom, this conference is just an absolute dogfight. Especially now that we see teams like Vanderbilt making noise. You see South Carolina making noise. Missouri's always, lurking around. Auburn's always talking about they got a good recruiting class and whatnot. Texas A&M, Florida is good now. Florida went 7-5 last year, and they had the hardest schedule in college football, and they also do this year or next to it, the next to hardest. Um, but they are a solid program now. So the SEC is just a gauntlet, and I can't lie, it is a dogfight each and every week in that conference. It doesn't mean they're the best; they're not the best, but the SEC is very deep. Um, my conference championship predictions for the SEC this upcoming season is a rematch of last year, and it will be Georgia versus Texas. Now, I say this because I look at the SEC and I'm like, okay, it could really be any team. Like of the good teams, like it could be Alabama, it could be LSU, it could be Oklahoma. It could be, uh, it could be Tennessee. It could be anybody. Like you just don't know. But I think if I have to pick two teams that I think are the strongest right now in that conference, I look at Texas and I look at Arch Manning taking over the program, and even though he's getting like a lot of overhype, I think he's getting a lot of too much hype. Like we really haven't seen too much from him yet to be like, oh, he's just gonna take off and run with it. They're gonna go undefeated. He's gonna win the Heisman Trophy. He's number one pick. I'm like, hey, let's slow down a little bit. I understand he's Eli and Peyton's nephew. I understand this, but let's slow down a little bit. Um, he hasn't really started. He hasn't played too much. Let's see something first. But I do think that he kind of provides a higher ceiling than Quinn Ewers did for Texas. I think he's a little bit more talented as far as throwing, arm talent, running. And then, of course, he's got, Hall of Fame DNA. So I just think him being there at Texas, and Texas is now officially back. We can officially say that now, even though we were saying that for a decade and then they just kept losing and losing. We're like, why do people keep saying this? Texas is back now. You know, they made the playoff. They're a solid program. They're in the SEC now. They get 5-star recruits day in and day out, so they're going to reload. Um, I think they're going to be solid. Steve Sarkisian is one of the best coaches in college football. I actually think he is like the best right now. Now that Nick Saban's gone, I know Ryan Day, of course, Ohio State, but I think Steve is just like he know he's a player coach, but like he's got them in line as well. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
Texas is just a really good program right now, and I think Arch Manning is going to provide just even a little bit more of a bump for them. So I think they're gonna run away with not run away with the SEC, but I think they're going to be leading the SEC. And then Georgia, I say Georgia just because of the consistency, just because we've seen them do it year in year out. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is, doesn't matter who the running back is, doesn't matter who the receivers are. As long as Kirby Smart is there leading that team and leading that program, the Georgia Bulldogs are going to be a force to be reckoned with. And I don't know if I can say any other team in the SEC is better than them right now. I don't know if I can say Alabama's better than them right now because of what we saw last year. I don't know if I can say that South Carolina is better than Georgia right now. I don't know if I can say LSU is or A&M is or Florida. So I kind of have to go with Georgia. And, even though it's a rematch, especially because they played twice last year as well as Ohio State and Oregon, Texas and Georgia played in the regular season. And that was the game that we saw in Texas, in Austin, where they were throwing bottles on the field. I don't know if you
Yep.
They were throwing bottles on the field because they were protesting a bad call. And it was a bad call, by the way. I know it was controversial at the time, but it was a bad call. And they actually fixed it, which is something that, as a football fan, I remember this. I remember thinking, like, how many times do you see them fix a mistake that they just made on the field? Like,
Yep.
they're like, okay, we were wrong. We're going to go back and change it. And then, like, people were like, like, whoa, you can't do that. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're doing literally what they should be doing. This is what should happen. Why are we just allowing mistakes to control the outcome of games? Like, you should fix the mistake. You see the mistake, fix it. I don't really care what the rules are or whatnot. You made a mistake and you know it, fix it. You don't just, well, sorry, I guess you just got to play with it. Like, no, I've never understood that about, refereeing and rules and all that when it comes to sports. But they actually fixed it, and I applaud the referees that day for fixing it. But the problem was, right before they fixed it, the Texas faithful decided to throw uh, cans and bottles on the field to take out their frustrations on the refs. So
Yeah,
that
it almost made it seem like a little like it made it seem like the refs were like pressured into doing it, which I think that's what got most people upset because it's like, oh, they're throwing bottles on the field. We better calm them down by turning over the call. But yeah, I think it as a neither a Texas nor Georgia fan, I was kind of like that. I can see how, like, if you change a wrong call to a right call, that works. But I think what would worry me is changing a right call to a wrong call. But I mean, I don't see that happening a lot, but just the potential of that happening because we know how referees are blind anyway. So, and that's my 2 cents on that. But I agree that it is good to see them change a wrong call to a right call. That's good for football.
but it ended up not even affecting the game really because Georgia ended up winning anyway. So
Right.
and then they beat them again in the conference championship, as we know, in Atlanta. So
Yep. Yep.
Georgia swept the series last season. So Texas is going to be ultra motivated to come back this season. And if they match up with Georgia, to absolutely take their anger out on Georgia from what they did to them last year. Even though Texas still ended up making the playoff and made a run because, those are the only two games Texas lost last year was Georgia twice. You know what I mean? They
And then Ohio State in the playoffs. But I mean, when you're looking at that, it's like, oh, you lost to Georgia twice and Ohio State once. That's it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Ohio State in the end in the playoff, of course, but Georgia twice leading up to that point, and other than that, they swept through everybody. So Texas is going to be motivated. They're going to come back, and when they match up with Georgia, they're going to be ready for them. And I think that's going to come in the conference championship. And who knows, they might play twice again this season as well. So um, I think the SEC from top to bottom is a very difficult conference, and I'll get into all the teams as well. But go ahead, Tom, and say what you want to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, you were speaking the truth, I'd say. So SEC, I also have Georgia beating Texas, and for the reason like we just mentioned, Georgia swept the series with Texas last year. I think Georgia beats Texas, and again, I have Texas going back to the SEC championship because last year the only teams they lost to were Georgia and Ohio State, which is very, those are respectable losses, especially losing to the national champion in the end. You can't hang your head with that season. But yeah, again, I mean, if you want to just go top down, I think Alabama comes back and has another good year. I think they'll be hanging it just right behind Texas and Georgia in third for most of the season. And then I don't know, like I'm looking at the conference records last year. We have two teams at 6-2, and then six teams at 5-3 in conference play. Which I mean, I think it's just a tough conference all around. You have Texas A&M spending all the money that they do. South Carolina always, well, not always solid, but it seems like they're kind of up and coming a little bit. LSU, is their quarterback coming back?
Yes, Garrett Nussmeier is coming back for his senior season, draft prospect, but he decided to come back for his final year, and he should be a high one next year if he has a good season.
Yeah, and I mean, Florida is always Florida. That's just one of those teams. It's a dynasty. It's an old school, just gritty team. Another one where you want to talk about how deep a conference is. When you have Florida going 4-4 in conference play, I think that's a good telltale sign. And I mean, Oklahoma came in and they struggled a little bit, but I mean, they're down there with a team like Auburn. They both went 2-6 in conference play. I think Oklahoma could, they're Oklahoma. They're another team like Florida. They always want to be in the conversation, and if they're not, then they're working double time to get back there. So other than that, though, I mean, I just think the SEC Steve Sarkisian, I think, is starting an Alabama-esque dynasty. As much as I hate to say that, but and Georgia with George Kirby, or yeah, George Kirby, right?
Kirby Smart.
Kirby Smart. I don't know. I said Georgia and I thought George, but yeah, he's another one of those dynasty-esque coaches where if you want to talk about best coaches in the country, you gotta talk about Kirby Smart. Got to talk about Steve Sarkisian, Ryan Day. Um, but no, I mean, at Ole Miss, we'll see. They lost Jackson Dart, and I mean, he was definitely a key factor for them last year. So not entirely sure about Ole Miss. Missouri, kind of a sneaky little 5-3 conference, 10-3 overall. They looked pretty good last year, explosive. They did have Luther Burden, and I believe he's in the NFL now.
Yes, he got drafted in the second round, I believe.
Yeah,
By
yeah. So
I think it was the Bears. I think the Bears got him.
and he was another one of those teams where it's hard to say a wide receiver carried a team, but good Lord, Luther Burden, man, he
Yeah, he
was
could.
amazing last year. Long story short, I got Georgia beating Texas in the SEC championship. SEC's deep top to bottom. Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia's coming back. He was a little, came on hot at the end. They beat Alabama, right? That was one of Alabama's conference losses, right?
It sure was, and it was a
Yeah.
glorious day.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. That is. Yeah. But I think
Bobby made
Alabama.
a bad
I
man.
think. Yes, he is. And he's one of those guys where I respect him because he's not NIL chasing. He stayed put at Vanderbilt, and he's coming back, and he's going to try and double that, change that 3-5 to 5-3, and take him to a bowl game. But that's my thoughts on the SEC. Anything else you wanted to add about the SEC?
Yes, yes. I want to get in. I want to go like team by team, talk about the SEC because that is very deep, and so there's a lot to talk about with each one of these teams. But I'm gonna try to keep it a little brief. So Uh, we talked about Georgia and we talked about Texas. Let's get into LSU. LSU returns Garrett Nussmeier, their quarterback from last year, high NFL draft prospect at that position. One of the best QBs in college football, especially his stats were eye popping last season. He comes back with his coach. Ah, blanking on his name right now, Mr. Old Notre Dame coach.
Oh, Chip Kelly.
No, no, not Chip Kelly.
No,
Brian
isn't
Kelly.
it?
Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Mr.
Look at us with the names.
Mr. Notre Dame, Mr. Old Mr. Notre Dame. He's now at LSU. Coming back
Right.
with him, Brian Kelly, Garrett Nussmeier, and then LSU is always a very talented program. They're always going to have good receivers, good running backs. I just think last couple seasons they've had a little bit of a down year on the defensive side of the ball. That was really the problem the year that Jaden Daniels won the Heisman because they went 9-3 and he was insane, but they couldn't stop a nosebleed. So so they lost 3 games and they went 9-3, even though he won the Heisman. But that's kind of been their problem the last couple seasons. Their defense has kind of taken a little step back, but I'm sure that they're trying to rebuild that side of the ball. So if they get their defense back, LSU is going to make a push, and I think that they will be a playoff team this year, or at least on the bubble. So definitely watch it, LSU. Texas A&M. Texas A&M is interesting because Texas A&M had a good run last year. Like they were literally like, I think they were like 7-1, 8-1 at one point, and they could have made the playoff. Like all they had to do was beat Texas and get to the conference championship game, and then if they won that, they're in the playoff. And they came up really close. Of course, they came up short against their rivals, Texas. So the first time we've seen that game in like a decade, I think, Texas versus A&M. Uh, Great to have that rivalry back in college football. Just want to say that. But came up short, and then they kind of lost another game to South Carolina after that. And, kind of just came off the rails. But their quarterback over there, blank on his name too, but he took over Connor Wakeman after Connor Wakeman got benched. The new quarterback, he's very fast. He has a great arm, and I think if he just could get a little bit more experience under his belt, that he could be something. And that's a tale of a lot of SEC teams right now. A lot of SEC teams have young quarterbacks, especially teams that just sent their quarterbacks to the NFL last year. Um, they're going to have some new guys taking over and a lot of young QBs in the SEC. It's going to be very interesting to see who comes out and stands out amongst them. But that's one of them right there at A&M. And then um,
I do real quick. I just wanna remind you and anybody listening. So Texas A&M started off the season by playing Notre Dame, and it wasn't like they got blown out. It was 23-13. It was a tough game. And then, they pick up steam a little bit, pick up steam, beat Missouri, pick up steam, beat Mississippi State, beat LSU, then lose to a solid South Carolina team. They got beat by 24, so not the best. And then, win, play Auburn, lose to Auburn in overtime, 43-41. Then you have lost to Texas 17-7. So, they kind of bounced back a little bit. And then, like you said, just kind of fell off the rails and lost a tough one to USC in the Las Vegas Bowl. But that's just what I just wanted to mention that about Texas A&M last year is you look at their schedule, they had a tough schedule last year with hindsight and everything, but they played it well, and if they were just a couple plays, couple drives away from changing some of those games. So I mean, yeah, Texas A&M very, very solid. But yeah, continue.
yeah, thank you, Tom. Thank you for adding those details about the season and their record last year because A&M, a couple of those games go the other way and they're in the playoffs.
Yep.
Definitely a team to watch this year. Who else? You got Ole Miss. So Ole Miss,
Yeah.
Lane Kiffin, of course. Ole Miss is always going to be a solid program. Like Ole Miss is always going to be. They're not going to lose more than 4 games. You know what I mean? Like they're going to be
Yeah.
8-4, 9-3, 10-2, like just about every year. But Ole Miss is kind of like the Penn State of the SEC to me. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
love that. I love that.
because they're just like they're always good, but not great. You know what I mean? Like they can beat up all the teams they're supposed to beat. But then when they run into
Yeah.
Alabama, when they run into Georgia, even though they beat Georgia last year, but they run into Texas, whoever it is, but like they just seem to come up short every year. And last year was just a perfect example of that. There was no reason why Ole Miss did not make the playoff last year. It's really all their fault because they lost to Florida in a game where they should have won. They could have won that game so many times, and I watched that game. Or Ole Miss versus Florida last year. What's his name? Who just got drafted by the Giants? Jackson Dart,
Yep.
and he threw the game away multiple times. Multiple times in that game, he could have just did what he was supposed to, take care of the ball, and Ole Miss would have came out on top. But no, he just had to throw the ball to the other team. He did it like 3 times in like the span of like a minute because the first time there was like a flag, the second time there was another flag or something happened. Like he kept getting redos and then he kept throwing interceptions. It was like, bro, it was like, bro, calm down, bro. Like all you have to do is win this game and you're in the playoff. I'm like, it was baffling to see that. Even though Florida, had a good season last year and they were a solid team, like they had no business winning that game. As someone who watched that game, so Ole Miss is just a year in and year out disappointment to me. Kind of like how people see Penn State in the Big Ten, and they have a new quarterback this year. Young guy Austin Simmons. He's supposed to be the quarterback down there. They're saying that he's really good. That he's really talented, 5-star guy. I don't have no doubt that Ole Miss will be solid. I just think that they're always that team that's just like, almost. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I
Yeah, 100%.
I don't see them like, being like a championship contender, but I think they could definitely make the playoff if they just win the games they're supposed to, and then maybe win a game they're not supposed to, against one of those top tier teams we were talking about. But Ole Miss, they're going to be there. They're going to be on the bubble, and we'll see what happens. And then Florida. So I am very high on Florida.
Okay.
The problem with Florida is that they have the absolute gauntlet of a schedule, and
Oh,
it's not fair almost. Like I get that they're in the SEC, but it's like, bro, this is Florida. Like Florida, even though like you said they're a one of those old school traditional programs that have a lot of history. Like
yeah.
in the era of like what, like 2015 through now, 2010 through now, like that program has kind of struggled on the football field. You know what I mean? Like they've won baseball championships and stuff. They've done basketball championships now, and their
Yeah.
football program is just kind of lacking behind because they can't compete in the SEC. At least they haven't been able to in this era. But it seems like they're finally back, and it's kind of crazy because Billy Napier, their coach down there, was like on the hottest seats of seats you could be on for like a couple seasons. Like they wanted his head on a plate down in Gainesville, and
Yeah.
he somehow managed to survive. And then he's kind of resurrected his Florida team, and it was really cool to see that last year because last year they had a gauntlet of a schedule, and they went 7-5, and they came out and made a bowl game. I think it was like the first bowl game they made in a couple years, and they had a solid season. They were a good team. Like if they didn't have to play, the Georgias and the Texases and the LSUs and the Ole Misses and the Carolinas, just back to back to back to back. Like I think they would have been a really good team. They could have made a playoff last year if they would have had like a normal schedule. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
don't sleep on Florida. But I just think the one thing holding them back is that they just have a absolute dog of a schedule again this year, and it's just going to be so hard to win those games. But if they just win even 2 or 3 games that maybe they're not supposed to win, and then pick up the ones that they are supposed to win, watch out for Florida because Florida's got something going down there. PJ Lagway, their young QB, he is a stud. I don't even know why they were messing around with Graham Mertz last year, the transfer from Wisconsin, 6-year guy or whatever. He was not even close to PJ Lagway's level, and he was like a senior, and PJ Lagway was a freshman. So, PJ Lagway is the truth. He's on the same level as kind of Lenore Sellers. I don't think he gets as much buzz for some reason, but he's just as good. And it's going to be very interesting to see Florida this year.